Big news today, of course, is confirmation of all the speculation that's being doing the rounds over the past weeks, months and even years. Nedbank and Old Mutual have confirmed that HSBC has proposed buying a 70% stake in Nedbank. For more on that, I'm joined now by Nedbank CEO Mike Brown. Mike, thanks for coming in.
Pleasure.
Because you were in quite recently with your results and
That's
very
right.
Diplomatically said nothing about the deal. How long have you been party to these negotiations? Because I assume they have been going on for some time.
So certainly the negotiations have been taking place between Old Mutual and interested parties, not Nedbank. And we were informed on Friday evening. Our board was informed that HSBC had put a proposal to Old Mutual, and our board considered that on Friday evening, and hence we published the cautionary first thing this morning.
You said Old Mutual and interested parties. Are there more than one bank? Is there more than one bank that has been looking at Nedbank? Have you been having a chief executive of perhaps Standard Chartered visiting your offices?
So I think we really can't answer that question. I think if you look at what was down Reuters this morning, the chief executive of Old Mutual said there was more than one interested party, but declined to name any of them.
Of course, talks are exclusive at this stage. Would you anticipate any counter bid once a formal offer has been made by HSBC?
So I think it's very difficult to anticipate what could happen. What we do know is that this is just a proposal at this stage, so there is no certainty whether this will end up in a transaction or not.
And has any idea of price been put on the table at this stage?
No, I don't think it's appropriate to discuss that at this stage.
Of course, this is all subject to due diligence. Is HSBC likely to turn up anything untowards once it starts going through your books?
So we certainly wouldn't believe so. We think that we have a well-managed and conservative bank.
Okay, you said nothing on price, nothing on the table at the moment. But can you give an indication? Because I assume that Nedbank's board would have to give a recommendation to shareholders one way or the other once this formal offer has been made. Are you able to tell us what you would like to see put on the table? Do you think you're worth a bit of a premium at this stage?
So certainly, once there is a transaction put on the table, our board would have to consider that and give a recommendation to shareholders. And certainly price would only be one part of what a board would consider. They would also consider the strategic rationale for a transaction, the cultural fit of the organizations, and price would just be one piece of that.
Okay, so you're not going to tell us about how much you'd like to see there. Strategic rationale, tell us perhaps about that then.
Yeah, I think, certainly from a Nedbank perspective, we think that we've evolved our vision now to build Africa's most admired bank. We think we do have compelling growth prospects on a standalone basis or under Old Mutual ownership. And really, what we believe is that a global banking partner could help accelerate the delivery of our strategy and vision. And certainly HSBC's pedigree speaks for itself in that regard.
You said you're trying to make Nedbank into Africa's most admired bank. You're not the biggest bank, you're the fourth largest, and you probably have the smallest African footprint of the four retail banks here in South Africa. Tell us about the EcoBank Alliance. Has that been working? Is that something that HSBC would like to see retained if this deal does go ahead?
So certainly we would have to have discussions with them. We haven't had any discussions around matters like that at this stage. It would be too early to have done so. But absolutely the EcoBank Alliance is working very well for us. We've had a number of our South African customers who have moved their operations into Africa now begin to bank with EcoBank. And that was the primary objective of the alliance when we set it up. So we're very pleased with it.
The cultural fit?
So again, that's something we would have to work out as we get to meet and know people better over the next couple of months.
Of course, we know that HSBC has been present in South Africa for a long number of years. It's scaled back its presence on a number of occasions. Are you concerned that HSBC isn't fully committed to the South African market? Do you think this is a sign that it would be committed going into the future?
So again, I think that's a question better directed to HSBC. But if you look at their strategy, it's very much focused on emerging markets. And we do know that in their interim results recently, more than 60% of their profits globally came out of emerging markets, which they believe will grow faster than developed markets. If you look at their strategy, they also premise a lot of that on the fact that trade flows are going to grow faster than GDP. So this would link them into the trade flows between Africa as the commodity continent with Asia and indeed South America.
Of course, Nedbank has a strong business franchise, a little bit weaker on the retail side. What do you think that HSBC could bring to the party that might give you a bit of a competitive advantage on the retail side here in South Africa?
So I think, as we said, their pedigree speaks for themselves. They are the #1 global banking brand in the world. And they have a market capitalization of some $170 billion or 1.3 trillion rand. So certainly we think that they could bring significant financial muscle into this environment.
How about the cost of capital? Because they do carry a much stronger rating than you. Would it necessarily cheapen the cost of capital for Nedbank?
So I think that is something that one could look at. I mean, generally the domestic banks compete in the debt markets on relatively even basis in South Africa at the moment, but we have certainly seen some of our competitors who have foreign shareholders be able to raise debt capital more cheaply, particularly in the international markets.
Mike, do you know whether Old Mutual or HSBC, or yourselves for that matter, have been speaking to any of the regulators about this at this stage? And I know that there are no approvals in place at this stage, but have you taken those first tentative steps of speaking to Errol Kruger or perhaps the Finance Minister, Praveen Gordhan?
Yeah. So I think if you look into the Old Mutual announcement, they do say that preliminary discussions have taken place with various regulatory bodies, but that in no way would preempt any outcome of a formal regulatory process that would have to kick off if there was a firm intention to make an offer.
And of course this would be subject to regulatory approval in a number of jurisdictions, I'm quite sure, because you have operations elsewhere in Southern Africa, and of course HSBC would have to get regulatory approval as well, wouldn't it? Yeah,
I think it would be a very complicated regulatory process, and that's why we've set out in the announcement that we think our shareholders do need to exercise caution as one migrates through this.
How about the switch of appearance for Nedbank, moving from Old Mutual to HSBC? What would that mean for you? Because of course Old Mutual has been a long-term shareholder in Nedbank.
So certainly Old Mutual has been a very good shareholder for us, and we think that we've done well under their ownership, particularly from a synergies perspective here in South Africa. In fact, our shareholders have probably got somewhere around about 500 million rands worth of run rate synergies from operating closer on the ground in South Africa. I think you can also see in some of our competitors the synergies available from a global banking partner, particularly in areas like product, world-class risk management practices, etc.
Why would local shareholders of Nedbank want to have HSBC as your parent rather than Old Mutual? What would be in it for them, and why would they want to sell a portion of their stake to HSBC?
So I think clearly any shareholder, once all of the facts are on the table, would get a circular and would have to make their own decision in respect of that. And they would be trading whether an insurance company is a better owner of a bank or a global banking partner is a better owner of a bank, and would be able to accelerate the vision and growth strategy of a bank better than an insurance company could.
Well, what's your view on that?
Yeah, so we certainly believe that a global banking partner could accelerate the delivery of Nedbank's vision and strategy for all of our stakeholders, of which shareholders are one.
Mike, any idea of time frame at this stage?
I think it's very early to tell. It is likely to be a reasonably lengthy process given some historic examples that you could point to.